What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to look at the rumor that Square Enix could potentially be bought. So this comes from Bloomberg. I believe the article was originally in Japanese, and you have to convert it to English. So the wording is obviously it's a little off, but the title basically translates to multiple potential buyers interested in Square Enix reporting. So again, just in the title alone, it's a little bit, it's a little bit off there in terms of the wording, but this is really big news. You have Microsoft out there buying everybody. Okay, literally, if there's somebody on the street, Microsoft sees them, they say, "Hey, come work with us," right? That's what they're doing, and it's I think eventually going to pay off really big down the line. Probably not right away, probably not for a few years, but it will end up working out. Sony, there's a lot of people saying, "Okay, well, what could Sony do?" And I even did a fun video, and it was specifically for fun. I know, obviously the money and how much cash on hand these companies have, how much they're worth, all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things you have to kind of look into, and sometimes big purchases like this aren't really possible, right? For example, PlayStation doesn't make enough money to buy Square Enix, okay? But Sony as a company does. It's kind of this, Microsoft kind of puts everything into one thing as well, where Microsoft has an enormous amount of cash on hand where they're easily able to buy Bethesda, but I don't think, say, their gaming division would necessarily have, what was it, like $7.5 billion? It didn't necessarily come from the gaming division, okay? So, you can look at this for fun. I know there may be people, because again, there were people when I made those kind of fun videos, they're like, well, it's too expensive, and that's how I imagine these people talk. It's too expensive for Sony to be able to buy them with their cash. It's like, okay, what? I'm not saying Sony is the one here, all right? But, it was definitely a name, Square Enix, I guess, a company that people had thrown out there as something that could be bought by one of these two. There was potentially Sega has been linked to Microsoft for a very, very long time. And I did say, if Sony wants to if they literally want to compete in this way, which I don't think it's necessary to compete in buying all these different, companies, basically, literally buying publishers. But if they were to compete, Square Enix would absolutely be one to look at. There's a history there with Sony and Square Enix with Final Fantasy, even going back with Kingdom Hearts, right? But yeah, the fact of the matter is, if Square Enix gets bought by anybody, that's a big deal. You look at even EA. EA has been in the bidding war for a lot of different things as well. They make an enormous, thank you to their microtransactions in their sporting games. EA has a lot of money. They have a ton of money. So really, they don't say in the article who it is. Okay, they say multiple potential buyers, but they don't say in the article. They say they quoted two bankers familiar with the matter. That's how they know this information. I would say, firstly, I'd say I believe it. I would believe it. It could be one of those things you see it in sports, you hear it in sports, you hear it even in the gaming industry, with transactions and stuff like that, where it's there's always calls, and just because you're answering them doesn't mean anything's going to happen. You know what I mean? A sports analogy would be your star player on a bad team. You're going to get calls for that player, so making the rumor that you're taking calls is true, but doesn't mean that anything's going to happen from it. You know what I mean? It could be the same thing here. It could just mean people are companies. This is big time stuff, right? Companies are out there, they're throwing around $1 billion numbers to see what it would take, and they're listening. Square Enix is listening, but nothing's happened yet. Another interesting tidbit is Square, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't know this. I guess I probably should have, but Square Enix is more than just the gaming division. Square Enix is a little, now I would say only a little bit bigger than that, because the article says that over 70%, I think the actual number was 72% of sales from Square Enix came from the gaming division, which includes mobile, okay? So that's massive. So really, anything else that is part of Square Enix only does 28%. So if you're going to buy the whole thing, you may only want to get the gaming parts of it. You know what I mean? So very interesting. I think whoever gets it, I know I was kind of framing the first little bit of this video as it makes sense for Sony. It makes sense from a competitive standpoint. It also makes sense for Microsoft. If you really want to take things and say, no, we're not even going to give Sony again, I think these companies should be doing their own thing. Sony has strengths in a lot of different areas than Microsoft does. So I'm not saying Sony needs to do this, and I'm not saying Microsoft doing this immediately wins something for them. But if you're Microsoft and you say, all right, like Sony is maybe looking to purchase them, but we could purchase them. Why don't we give it a shot? Because again, like getting, and Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts are just 2 examples. Square Enix has a lot of big, even Life is Strange, so, a franchise that is near and dear to my heart. Only the first season, the rest of it's pretty not great besides Before the Storm. But like even Life is Strange, that's technically under Square Enix. There's a lot of games under Square Enix, so I think it would be something to look at if you're really any company. Obviously, Sony and Microsoft are the first 2, in my opinion, that like ring a bell or something that you would probably imagine would do it. But again, like EA, I feel like makes similar amounts of money to how much Square Enix is like in a year. But I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, again, when it comes to these big numbers, I don't know. Like, can you take out loans and stuff? Like, are you allowed to purchase somebody for more money than you have? How does all that stuff work? I mean, again, when you're talking about and I'm just throwing numbers. When you make $5 billion and you're purchasing somebody for like $6.5 billion, like how does that work? That I don't know how that works. I don't think a majority of people online know how that works. Right? There's been a couple like legal experts that like weighed in on the Bethesda Microsoft stuff that made it a little bit more clear. So again, if Square Enix gets bought, I'm sure they'll come back out and they'll say, okay, here's how this actually works, or here's why this actually worked, right? But definitely big. Square Enix is, they're not Microsoft, they're not Sony, they're not Nintendo, but Square Enix is, I would put them honestly in the same category as like EA, Ubisoft. But I guess Activision's probably a little bit higher than that too. There's maybe like 2 middle tiers that have like all of these guys. And to Square Enix, well, I guess I would say to some, Square Enix is probably higher or lower, because if you don't care about a lot of the Japanese influenced games like Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, Square Enix I think takes a massive drop, because that's a big part of who they are. So if you value Call of Duty, if you value any EA, so like sports games, right, or even like Battlefields and stuff like that, if you value that stuff more than you value some Japanese kind of JRPGs, right, it's a little Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy are a little bit removed from that, but if you value those more, then Square Enix is kind of worth less to you in your mind, right? But definitely interesting, and something that happened immediately. The first thing I saw when I checked Twitter was this, and I thought, wow, that's a good video right there. So let me know, guys, in the comments below, what do you think? If they do end up getting sold, who do you think would purchase them? What do you think that would mean? Let me know if you think it's even a big deal at all. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. And I do a brand new video every single day on this channel, and so I hope to see you guys for tomorrow's video.